there's sort of a paradoxical feeling that you're sort of cocooned in sort of this rock and stuff. So it's quite safe and quite a comforting feeling. But also you're aware of this mass on top of you and how it pushes against you, and so there's this sort of like, a little bit of fear and a bit of trepidation, but also quite a comforting feeling. So the steel sculptures that you'll see here are sheets of steel that are being crushed out with a car grabber, a big crane basically, and to crush down the steel and just sort of folded it down, and we unfolded it again. And I want
do you want to show them the crushing?
Well, you can show a little bit of it, maybe. I can show you a little bit of the process of that. I suppose, the way you can see here, like this is sort of a slow motion footage of the crane in action. I suppose when I was making the sculptures, I wanted them, even though they're made of this steel and quite a physical material, I wanted them to sort of have this light feeling and ephemeral feeling, sort of like the cave, that everything, even though everything's just solid, it's also in motion all the time, just over a much longer scale. So I wanted to have sculptures to have a certain fluidity and a sense of movement, and so when you walk around them, if we get a chance to walk down afterward maybe, each angle from them there's quite a different perspective and quite a different feeling when you see them, so almost like a cutout in the landscape or a movement of the landscape, So,
and the site is actually where the Boyle River and the canal come together, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's just along the canal down the marina. So it's just at the junction there. So it's particularly beautiful, and they're just placed within the grass there. So they're, as I said, they wanted them like to sort of be embedded a little bit in the landscape, The other work then is...
This is an area view of the landscapes you were setting it up.
So the other work then is called Avon, which is named after a piece of mapping software, and it's basically a diagram of a map of a cave. So the Avon software interprets the data that the cavers have taken from surveys. And you can use that to make a 3D model of the cave on the computer. And I've just sort of reinterpreted that with these vertical rods that are placed in the ground at the same coordinates as the map of the cave. So it's a very simple piece, but again,
I'm just going to show you.
The weather-wise, we didn't get a chance to go down today, but so as you can see, I was just placing these rods very subtly in the grass. Again, I like to make subtle interventions into the landscape. It's nothing too heavy, so each of the rods is cut to the coordinates of a section of the cave, and then placed in the map of the cave. So generally, it's so I suppose going underground now. I think Denis was calling me a speleology enthusiast. I think that was even too much, because I'm actually a little bit afraid of it myself. I've only gone underground a number of times. Sometimes a little bit tricky to get into places, but nothing too serious. So it's so there's always that trepidation with it, of course, like everyone else. But there's also this curiosity, and they're fascinating places. They feel very alien sometimes, very disorientating, but they're really unexplored places. Some of them as well. And it's amazing to think that we can have these spaces very close to us that have still the potential to discover a new place. That's that maybe nobody's ever been there. I'm sure Stephen can talk about that a little bit,
So the start of the Shannon is sort of a mystical place, a legendary place called Shannon Pot, Log na Shunna, and the water just wells up out of the ground in this large pot, and it flows on its way then. This picture is actually taken on a calm day, but on a day like today, after the flood post comes through, this actually becomes big. You get a big dome of water, and it's like a fizzy drinks bottle. It sort of spurts up out of the ground. I'm just showing you here a map of. It's like a caver's map. You see the source of the Shannon in the bottom left there. That's Shannon Pot, and you've got the border shown not very well there, but a red line between County Cavan and Fermanagh. And there's all little dots, you probably won't see them there, but there are hundreds of caves, literally hundreds of caves in this area. And as it turns out, they are linked, they're all interlinked, and a lot of them actually flow to the Shannon Pot here. So we've got caves right over on the east of the mountain, over in East Culca. We've got the Marble Arch system, which some of you probably have been to. We've got very close Cascade system, which since I made this slide several years ago has actually been linked with the Marble Arch, so there's a physical connection. We've got cave systems in Tullyhona, the Cavan Burren and Palnagossen, and then the focus of today is the Shannon system. The discovery of Shannon Cave itself happened in 1980. There's a small stream called the Pollahoney stream that flows from the north slope of Quilca Mountain, and it suddenly sinks into the ground. And in 1980, some local cavers broke through into an entrance nearby to discover what became known as Shannon Cave. And this is the original map that they had and what they discovered. So the entrance is up there in the top left, and they discovered in the time soon after they broke through, they discovered this length of passageway, the JCP mistake, and they came down as far as on the bottom left there, George's Choke, which was mentioned earlier. And in caving terms, when we say choke, it means a boulder collapse, so when a lot of boulders fall in from the ceiling or have been washed in by glacial activity, and it stops progress because the passage is blocked. So this one's called George's Choke, after this guy here, who's the Reverend George Pitt, who's a rector and also a caver. He's not caving nowadays, but he got trapped inside this choke when boulders fell around him. He was fine, but he was trapped for several hours, like 8 hours or something. And according to this article, he composed sermons and things when he was down there.
River. There were no mountains where I grew up. Only the miracle of McGann's Hill sloped towards the sky. No drumlins ruffled the flat fields that forced themselves to the horizon. The river broke the flatness, wound like a tired snake across the farms, dividing and joining. It was there when we crossed the bridge to school, and again at the furthest part of the farm it flooded each winter. The river was shallow at the Drooping Sally where the cows drank, but black and deep at the end of the next field. It undercut banks and gouged an islet where reeds and long grass waved. Golden globes of water lilies were just beyond our reach. Water hens darted from bulrushes to their nests, safe from us all. These two poems on lakes, this one is based on Loch Mucknow in County Monaghan, and you'll remember in 2009 and 2010 all the lakes got frozen over and people went out on the lakes skating and sliding and so on, and this is more or less tries to capture that, and I think there were some accidents, people went down through the ice and whatever. Time of water. Think only of white, snow and ice. Its weird, transparent grip on skin, as if magnetized for a moment. Clings its cold lust for warm blood, the need to enter and dissolve elsewhere. And when the lake froze 2 years ago, a young Polish lad slid out across the ice, dragged by 2 Alsatians on silver chains. Children in houses near the lake stood with faces close to window panes, their mouths like tiny circles, transfixed by fear in their bellies that the centre ice would creak, crack, and sucked them down to where torpid, glass-eyed pike eased by.